Welcome, dear viewers, to a new episode of Dialogue Horizon. In this episode, we'll cover many events which occurred last week, plus discussion about the political turmoil now in Sudan, and the possibilities of how to resolve this precarious situation. That's why I'm happy to host one of our distinguished guest professors, Professor Manzoor Abdullah Manzoor. He's a professor. He's in University of Khartoum, and he used to be, as we always introduce him to the viewers, as he used to be the peace man, the director of the Peace Research Institute of University of Khartoum. Still he is in University of Khartoum. Also, he has a lot of contributions, many contributions in different institutions globally in the globe. So that's why we are happy to host you, Professor Manzoor Abdullah Manzoor.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Professor, for coming. Let us start by the most recent event which occurred the end of this week, almost the end on the or middle of the this week, which is on Monday. The participation of General Burhan, the chairman of the Sovereign Council, on the funeral procession of Queen Elizabeth. Which it was according to, it was an invitation actually from the palace, Buckingham Palace, to the President of Sudan. Maybe this is you can elaborate on this. Maybe it's because there is very special relation between Sudan and Britain. As all viewers remember that Britain and Egypt, they were in the condominium, the colonization of since 1898 to 1956, and also one of the historic events which occurred, the same queen which she passed, the late Queen Elizabeth, visited Sudan in 1965, and she was warmly welcomed by Sudanese people and the officials and even the people of the streets. She was warmly welcomed. Maybe this is one of the reasons why Sudan got this invitation to participate in the procession of funeral of Queen Elizabeth. Can you elaborate on this? What are the meanings of this invitation from the beginning? The participation of General Burhan, was it something good? Will it add any good to Sudan? Just give us an overall picture of the visit to Britain, to London.
Well, I have been following what has been said, or what people were saying about this participation of Al-Burhan. Mm-hmm. And of course, the analysis go into different directions. Some people would look at it as a normal visit by virtue of the fact that Burhan is a de facto head of the state. And the Buckingham Palace sent invitations to all of its states, I think, except those of the 5 countries, North Korea, Myanmar, Russia, Belarus, and another country, and Syria, of course.
Syria.
Yeah, so these were all of the countries that were excluded from those invitations. And in this sense, this is something that's normal. Nothing is actually abnormal about this, and it shouldn't be seen as something that is extraordinary
to Sudan,
or something that is going to reflect positively on the image of Al-Burhan in particular, because UK is one of the countries that are engaged in the Sudanese crisis through its membership in the Troika and through its membership in the Quad, that includes Saudi Arabia, US, and UAE, and of course the UK. So my personal reading is that this is a normal visit. This is a normal invitation under the circumstances, and probably this is also due to the special relationship that links the two countries. Sudan has been a British colony until 1956, and the Queen, or the late Queen Elizabeth II, visited the country, as you indicated, in 1965, and coincidentally, she was received by the late Professor Tijan al-Mahi, who was member of the Sovereign Council. At that time, also we had the Sovereignty Council.
Sovereign Council,
Yeah.
yes,
So probably this is a coincidence.
it was by rotation, I remember, yes.
Yes,
Mahi was,
exactly. So I look at it this way. This is something that is just
it's like tradition.
exactly, and given the fact that the last Queen Elizabeth II was in the throne for 70 years, I think Britain was looking for a funeral that would reflect how much the world, or the world leaders, respect the late Queen, and so that they need to organize the funeral in such a way that most, if not all, world leaders will be there.
And also, Professor, still, Britain and UK, they have very special relation with Sudan. Or they have very special memories about Sudanese governance and the people, because they governed Sudan for quite a long time, almost 60 or more than 60.
No, that's true. We have cultural ties. Of course, there is a British Council that used to provide, and I think it still continues to provide scholarships through the Chevening scheme to Sudanese students who would study in the UK. And during the 70s and 80s, the British Council also used to pay British language teachers to come and teach in the high schools in the country. I was taught by a British language teacher in high school in Al-Fashir. So there are cultural ties, there are of course political ties, and also the very fact that the UK, as I said, is very much engaged in the current crisis in the country. It tries to contribute to finding a way out of this.
By virtue of being member of the Troika?
Yes, a member of the Quad.
Member of the Troika, okay.
Yeah.
So that's very good.
Yeah.
Okay, so you think that I agree that the participation is important, that should have been done, because it was an invitation not only to Sudan, as you said, this is the British, everybody knows that they have their own traditions and they stick firmly to the traditions of especially of the king and throne and queens, and they have they're very adamant about abiding by the inherited legacies and protocols.
That's true.
So it's good that Sudan has to be part of this.
Yeah.
Okay, now something similar to this, if we go from this, 1 or 2 days after this visit, in the participation of the funeral of the Queen, the General Burhan also decided to address the United Nations. By the way, I forgot to tell you that Sudanese president since it's the only, Burhan was the first Sudanese president since 1987
to visit the UK.
To visit UK.
Right.
Okay. Also, Burhan General Burhan went to the General Assembly of the United Nations, and he addressed. People were skeptical that, or they're afraid that maybe America will not grant him the visa to go like what it did before to al-Bashir. Before, America did not grant al-Bashir. He was intending also to address the United Nations, but this time Burhan got the approval and he got the visa, and he addressed actually the United Nations Assembly. What can you tell us about this visit? Is it good? Bearing in mind that for quite a long time, almost 30 years, Sudan did not participate in the General Assembly of the United Nations. This is the 77th anniversary of the United Nations. Sudan for almost 35 years did not come in the United States at the level of the president.
Well, I think
what is your evaluation about the speech also addressed how was it received by the members of the United Nations?
I think as far as I can remember, Bashir did participate during the early years of his rule.
Yeah, in the early
Before the
years.
ICC
Before the
indictment.
sanctions.
Exactly, before the sanctions. So I think he went there a couple of times. Now again, I think the visit of Al-Burhan to the United States came on the invitation by the United Nations. And again, the UN invites all of its heads of states to come and deliver their country's speeches in the General Assembly. So there is nothing special about this. Al-Burhan is the de facto head of state, and it makes sense that he receives invitations to attend this
General Assembly.
these kind of events, funerals, General Assembly meetings, and all of that. And the United States is bound to provide entry visa for him because he isn't wanted by any international, criminal court or tribunal. And let us recall the fact that I think in the 70s, when the U.S. refused to provide the visa to Yasser Arafat, the UN decided to take the General Assembly to Geneva. So the United States is bound by the UN Charter to provide visas to heads of state unless there is a compelling reason, like the ICC indictment for Bashir, that would make it difficult for the US to provide visa for Bashir. And I think even with Bashir, there shouldn't be a problem of providing a visa, but just to avoid embarrassing the U.S. government
By the warrant of arrest of
exactly,
the ICC.
Exactly. So the point is, this is also a routine visit. It doesn't really mean a lot. I would be having a different position had the invitation came from the White House and had Al-Burhan been received by the U.S. President or U.S. administration. That would have been a totally different scenario or story.
The different, yeah.
But to attend the General Assembly, this is an ordinary and routine activity or visit, and it really shouldn't steer all the debate that I am seeing in the social media.
And what about the speech itself?
Well, yes, I followed or listened to what Burhan has said. He said things that are factual, that are there. He tried to emphasize a couple of things. That the military is sincere about leaving politics, that they are looking for fair and transparent elections at the end of the transitional period, that Sudan contributes to the international regional security, that Sudan hosts millions or probably hundreds of thousands of refugees from neighboring countries, that Sudan needs the support of the international community. Now, one of the things that I was a bit surprised about was his request for the international community to resume providing financial support for the Sudan, and that he requested the international community to respect their pledges that they did during Hamdok's government. This is a little bit surprising for me, because the very reason why the international community rescinded its support was because of the October 25th, 2021 military coup. And this should have been very clear for Al-Burhan. So you cannot expect the international community to provide support while the same international community is condemning what happened on October 25th, 2021.
But they cannot resume
No.
without the aversion of the situation yet.
Exactly.
So that's
But generally, the speech is an ordinary speech. Again, it's a normal speech, and all heads of states try to emphasize things that they deem important or things that they deem relevant for the General Assembly, and that's what Burhan did.
well, that's good.
Yeah.
How was it? Did you notice from the feeling of the people, of the president or the representatives of the General Assembly, is it something normal to them? Not something special about Sudan, because Biden in his speech he mentioned Sudan. Biden in his he mentioned the women of Sudan protesters. He said something about democracy.
I didn't listen to what Biden say, but I don't see what Al-Burhan said that's special by all
Nothing
means.
special.
It's an ordinary
It's
speech.
normal.
Yeah, it's an ordinary speech.
So you believe that in both participation, both in it was something normal and also necessary. Though at least Sudan as Sudan.
Of course.
As an
Of course,
entity,
there has got to be a head of state
head of
who
state
takes part
Okay.
in these kind of things.
Which is better.
Funerals of dignitaries, attending the General Assembly meetings. These are things that anyone should be
It's very
participating
good.
in. They're not special by all means.
That's good, because our absence is more damaging than our presence.
That is true.
Yes, absence.
That's
Very,
true.
very good.
That's
That's good, Professor. Okay, let us go. Now we cover this, the most recent events, the two events of the participation of General Burhan in the funeral of Queen Elizabeth and the participation in the United Nations 77th General Assembly and his speech. Now let us go back to Sudan. Still the country is in turmoil. Still nobody knows exactly what will happen next. And once you said that, it is getting complicated by the minute. Every minute, every time, things are getting complicated. And the distance is widening between the different factions, whether it's political or even among the civilians. Among all this, the Bar Association, the Bar Association, advocates, the few weeks ago they presented a constitution, actually draft of a constitution, not a document, to replace the
Constitutional Declaration.
Constitutional Declaration. And last week they held a workshop, big workshop attended by many people, and also in the workshop people did not come to. First of all, I want to ask you about this constitution. Is it for the transitional period or for the permanent draft for the period?
No, this is. I attended some of the functions
Okay.
of the Sudanese Bar Association's steering committee, and what they produce is something for the transitional period. This is not a permanent constitution.
Not constitution.
Exactly, because there are some people who are opposing it, try to portray it as a permanent constitution, which is not true.
No.
The Sudanese Bar Association started the whole process last month in August. They held a 3 days workshop, the 8th, the 9th, and the 10th, where they invited some people, and they deliberated on many issues. And one of the recommendations that came out of that workshop is to work out a constitutional declaration.
Declared.
Exactly. On that, they formed a committee that worked on that, and on September 8th, exactly 1 month after the workshop, they held a press conference where they announced that they had a draft declaration, a draft constitutional declaration. And the intention is to share it with the stakeholders, the international community.
All of them, all
everybody.
including the other FFC.
Well, they say that this is a document that should be made available for everybody.
For everybody, okay.
And that they welcome suggestions, whatever. So, to me, I look at this in a very positive way, because this has proven to be something that has stirred a lot of debate. And this in itself is a positive thing. Of course, we had a lot of initiatives floating around. And if you remember, in two of the episodes, we spoke about the different initiatives.
Yes.
Now, this one was the one that really succeeded in stirring a lot of debate. It succeeded in getting the support of the trilateral mechanism. They welcomed it.
And even General Hemeti.
General Hemeti himself, he said, we welcome this development and we will look at it, and then we will provide our comments on it.
Comments on it.
And so you have a document that is having the potential to galvanize support and to have people supporting it and looking at it as something that may be a step to move forward with the transition. This is how I look at it.
And the people who prepared this, the bar association, these people, they are open for amendment or any change or any. Are they open for genuine discussion that might lead to amendment of some article?
Of course, that is what they say. That this is a document. That
not
this
final.
Is, no, it's not final. And this is also one of the misunderstandings that people need to be aware of. That there are groups who are opposing to this initiative or to this effort, try to portray it as a permanent constitution, or that it is not amenable to rectification or to, amendment or so. But this is not true. I attended the press conference where the Sudanese Bar Association announced it. Yeah. And they said that, exactly, they want to reach out to all the stakeholders.
Did it touch any of the Juba agreement?
No, the Juba agreement was they say that it would be, and this is also something that they said during the workshop of August. They clearly indicated the Juba agreement is something to be there. It might need to be revised. It might need to be looked at.
But to be respected at least.
Exactly, exactly. So it is.
Because some people in the Juba, they are afraid. They said something. They are talking about. Some people are starting to talk about the agreement itself to nullify it completely.
Yeah.
Or that's why sometimes they are threatening that they will go back to war. And from where did they get this?
There are actually voices to the effect of saying exactly what you said, that we have to strike out the whole of Juba agreement and all of that. But I think, to me, this is not realistic at all.
Not even included in the document, the proposed document. It does not say clearly that we have to.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't say that we have to strike away the Juba peace agreement. No.
But amendment, because many people are talking about the tracks. Some people are talking about just removing the annexed tracks of the east and north and these tracks.
That is part of what could be,
the amendment
happen, or what could be amended in the Juba peace agreement. But the point is that you cannot simply say that we have to throw away the whole agreement. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Because there are certain things that would be there anyway. Even if you come up with a new agreement, there are certain things that will be there.
This must be there.
Whether you like it or not. And for this reason, it doesn't really make sense to just forget about. And even the Sudanese Bar Association's declaration, to me, it's a revised version of the Constitutional Declaration of August 2019.
The revised version?
Of course. It is a revised version of that Constitutional Declaration. So, and this is why the very idea of throwing away things, or it doesn't really make sense. You have to build on something.
You have to build on something. Exactly. That's what I want to. But can you just give us a few points about the main issues of the declaration? This could
first is
like the interim period. How many? Just give us a brief.
I think they spoke of 24 months as a period for the transition. They spoke of accountability for the crimes that happened. They spoke of the necessity of having the dismantling committee. They spoke about having one and unified army. These are the key provisions. They spoke about transitional justice and all of that. So most of the things that were there in the 2019 Constitutional Declaration were also here, and some commentators would look at this Sudanese Bar Association's document as a better version of the Constitutional Declaration of 2019.
That one, because already after the coup of October 25th, part of it was removed by General Burhan by the coup.
That's right.
So it's only logical that a new draft, they cannot build on what is already being damaged. So that is only logical to draft such.
Yeah, but to me, the whole point is that this is a positive step. This is something that is having a potential of creating a commotion and discussions that may move us forward. And let's not forget the fact that the document has received a lot of support from the trilateral, from the international community,
And the international
even
community
from the head of the deputy head of the Sovereign Council.
unlike the
Unlike other
initiatives,
initiatives.
which he
No, no,
categorically
yeah,
rejected
yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah.
So-
Even if they were not rejected, nobody was actually supporting them, or nobody is actually even
How
speaking about
many
them.
how many years the document is proposing for the transition to
I think 24 months,
24 2 years,
2 years.
and the governance will be technocrat, or did they talk about?
Yeah, I think they talk about independent, qualified.
This is only logical.
Yeah.
You cannot talk about parties
No, no.
in any way, in any form.
Yeah.
Once you start talking about parties, you will talk about.
Elections.
Yeah, so this is okay. The 24 months for general elections,
2 years. That is the transition period.
transition period,
Yeah.
and the governance is the assumption. This is on the assumption that the army withdraws to the barracks
Well, of course.
with the assumption.
Of course,
because
of course. The declaration rejects any
Presence
presence for the army in the political scene. That is very clear.
Because also before the Bar Association proposal on the 4th of July.
Yeah,
General
that's
Burhan-
what the
General-
chairman Burhan said. Anyway, so nobody should be angered by this, you know, because the army itself is saying.
Or he said it before.
I'm not going to be part of politics anyway.
Okay, that's good. Okay, now having said something about the declaration of Burhan, the withdrawal of the army on the 4th of July, that the withdrawal of the army to withdrawal from the negotiations and from
Dialogue.
And even from the governance in the transitional period, it seems that something people they think it is pretty premature. That's Volcker, what Volcker said and what the Troika say. You cannot broker a deal without the involvement of the army. They should be. Many people are confused. What does this mean when Burhan says the army will withdraw completely from not from the government, from the negotiations?
Let me put it this way. I have said my opinion in this. What happened in the 4th of July is simply a cynical move from the army. Because you cannot say that I'm walking out of negotiations and dialogue and politics while you are a de facto ruler of the country. You are hiring, you are firing, you are representing the country, you are receiving ambassadors, you are sending ambassadors, and yet you say I'm out of politics. It doesn't work this way.
So
you see, and even if Burhan is sincere in what he is saying, we are not seeing any result. The civilians are not talking to each other.
Yes.
They're not agreeing, and I don't think the civilians will agree among themselves. This is not going to happen.
And even the Volcker, you cannot broker a deal. You cannot get the deal without the consent or the approval of the army, which actually ruling now.
Precisely. That's my point.
That's logical.
That's my point. And
What
for
you
this
are-
reason, I'm not one of the believers in this situation that the army is now out of politics and that the chance is now for the civilians to come together. It's not going to happen. And as a matter of fact, this is going to complicate the situation further.
It will be complicated.
It is complicated by the day. So I think something is needed to be done because this is not working.
Not working, definitely. And almost now 1 year.
It's not working. Now we are 2 months plus. Actually, we are 6 weeks after the declaration of Burhan that the army is now pulling out of the dialogue.
6 weeks.
6 weeks. Nothing happened. And I tell you, we will wait 6 weeks later and nothing happens.
And this thing aggravated by the differences between the civilians. Even the civilians, they cannot come to a point where they can convince the army.
No, they will not come to any agreement simply because the FFC 1 Central Council, they look at FFC 2, that is FFC National Consensus, as the proxies for the coup. And they say that why should we sit with a proxy?
So how can it be solved? How can it be
It
solved?
won't be solved. You know, my way of looking at it is that the army has to re-engage.
To re-engage.
They have to re-engage.
Okay. In the negotiation.
If they are sincere about getting away or solving the stalemate, they have to re-engage. There's no way out, because the civilians will not agree. Actually, they will not even sit with each other.
So
This is one, and let us not forget the fact that you have a whole different story when it comes to the resistance committees. You know,
it's a different story.
that are not talking to anyone, and they reject everything and anything. And now the serious situation is that they are thinking of forming their transitional parliament and choosing a prime minister. That's what we see in the social media.
Yes, what I saw.
This is what they're doing. So you have a brewing problem that's going to be quite serious.
It's very serious.
And you sit there and tell the world that I'm out of dialogue and I wait for the civilians to come together. I don't think this is responsible.
It's not good. So you are thinking that the army must re-engage.
The army has to re-engage.
Re-engage in the negotiation.
They have to re-engage.
Civilians, if the army waiting for the civilians to come to a consensus,
This will not happen.
extremely difficult or impossible.
It's not happening.
It's not going.
It's not going to happen.
Until somebody had a stick actually.
It's not going to happen. I'm telling you.
So you can wait years and years. People. So you don't think that there any possibility that the civilians will come to a point?
No, highly unlikely.
You don't feel that it will happen soon.
It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen.
So okay, what will be the step? Okay, let us go think of something. Okay, as is, things cannot go like this forever. Maybe some people are talking that General Burhan, when he comes from the United States, America, maybe in the coming few days he will form a government.
I would be the happiest person if that happens.
Any government?
Because this is what I have been saying. Why not the chairman of the Southern Council go ahead, appoint a government of technocrats, and let the political parties or whoever is there to prepare for the elections?
For the elections.
That is one way out.
So why is he reluctant to take this step? This is very obvious.
I have no idea.
You have, because I know. Maybe, as you said, you mentioned something very important, that the RC, the revolution committees, nobody knows what will be the reaction. It seems that the reaction to any government, they will reject it. And maybe the streets will boil again. Now it's a little bit calm, a little bit. But things might explode to the violence, well, not violence, the masses, the millions, which cause the sitting, and things will start all from zero.
Yeah. You see, the problem we're having is we have a military coup that is now almost 1 year. We don't have a credibly functioning government. We don't have a prime minister. You know, the civilians are not talking to each other. The military said I'm pulling out of the dialogue.
At the wrong time.
The resistance committees are saying no to everything, and of course with them are others. This is a crazy situation, and being a head of a state, and you are looking at all this, and you're not doing anything, and you pretend that I'm waiting for the civilians to come together.
They will not.
Something has to happen, you know. Something has got to happen, and I think
to bear the consequences, it will have. Any formation, any decision to form a government will have definitely, but you have to be prepared for that.
Of course.
This
is by virtue of being in that position of responsibility. You have to take actions, and you have to be prepared.
Yes,
you know,
to prepare
for the repercussions.
You cannot appease all people.
Of course, you cannot make everybody happy.
You cannot, definitely.
Precisely.
So you have to take this step and to bear the responsibility of the consequences of what will happen.
That's right. That is true.
But he has to be very fair. You have to, when appointing the government, he has to bear in mind, which is subordinates, the general attitude of the people. For example, you cannot take a government from the other faction of one. You cannot.
Yeah, yeah, of course.
He has to. He has
Of
to.
course,
He has
of
to be very
course.
careful, striking a balance.
No,
There
that
are many prime ministers. They can fill the job without affiliation to any
political party.
political
No,
party
true,
or to.
true. There is actually a possibility to do this, but again, he would be stuck with the political parties. He would be stuck with FFC1 plus FFC2 plus resistance committees and those who are opposing everything. Even if he chooses a cabinet that is purely made up of qualified apolitical, members.
Not necessarily technocrats. They can be political.
No, they can't be political because you are going to anger the political parties.
So
There's no question about
They
it.
have to be technocrats.
Absolutely, they have to be technocrats. That is one way of, and probably this would be convincing for a lot of people, at least inside the country, that if we have a cabinet headed by a prime minister who is not affiliated to any political party, and the cabinet members are also qualified technocrats, nobody should be angry, and that this government should work on certain files, including preparing the country for elections. I don't think anyone would be having the guts to oppose this kind of arrangement. And the question that begs for an answer is why Al-Burhan is not doing this. You see?
So, more damaging to wait. Waiting is more damaging
Waiting is more damaging.
than taking a decision and taking the full responsibility.
Absolutely.
But he has to be fair, very fair in the decision. I mean, in the appointing the people, he has to be fair.
Yeah, of course. Omar, I'm saying this because in my mind, the very difficult and polarized situation in the country that really doesn't allow the luxury of waiting and waiting and waiting. You have a very badly performing economy. You have tensions all over the country, and yet you behave like business as usual. And this is unbecoming.
It's unbecoming.
You see? Someone has to be more responsible than what is happening hitherto.
Okay, that's good. Okay, let us now move to also something linked to this about the American ambassador. The American ambassador, John Woodbury, he's well experienced. He was carefully selected by the American administration. And he worked in different parts of the globe with conflicts. And now we can see, they can see what the turmoil, what is happening in Libya, 3 governments, what's happening in Syria, what is happening in different parts of the Middle East, almost all in Iraq and Lebanon. The selection, and when he started the full power. He started meeting with different people, and it seems that he's well experienced. So can you tell us about the after 27 years or how many years, America, they have a full representation by a specially selected ambassador. Can you tell us about his role and his aspiration and your expectation? Can he succeed in doing something?
Well,
having the leverage of America?
Well, honestly, the only thing I see as catching for me is the fact that this is the first ambassador after almost 27 years.
Yes.
Apart from that, I wouldn't put my eggs in the U.S. basket. The U.S. has been wreaking havoc in the Sudan. I have to be very honest here. Mm-hmm. I really fail to see any positive contribution, politically speaking, coming from the U.S. administration. Of course, we acknowledge the support that the U.S. has been providing through the U.S. aid and through the international community. They actually, the U.S. is the biggest donor for Sudan. A lot of people don't know this, but it is a fact.
From all systems, America has concern in Sudan long.
No, I know.
Immediately after independence.
No, I know, and that was why when there was this political fuss about the money that was paid for the court to settle the coal incident, some people were against it, that Sudan shouldn't be paying that 300 plus million dollars. And I was telling them, this is actually far less than what the US pays for Sudan anyway. So the thing is, and this is my personal reading, the US is really not very clear about its policy on Sudan.
Not very clear.
Not very clear. We have been seeing this for the past 30 years. Maybe the new ambassador is coming with a different thing, but at the end of the day, he represents the US institutions. And I don't think, and you must have been following, how many special envoys resigned? I think two.
Two, yeah, at least two.
You see? So when it comes to Sudan, there isn't a very clear US policy.
But they have interest on Sudan. Since, by the way, America is the first state to recognize the independence of Sudan. The first, number one. Egypt and the condominium, Egypt and UK, by de facto, when they grant Sudan the independence, this is the, but America is the, after that, America is also the first US aid in the 60s, and it seems that America is still, they have some concern about Sudan.
Well, of
and they
course.
don't want it to slip to
No, for sure. For sure, the US is very concerned about
the coherence of Sudan.
of course, they are very concerned about the possibility that the country might
slip into chaos with anarchy.
slip into chaos. That is something for sure they don't want to.
They don't want it.
They don't. That is no question about it. But
Why?
apart from that,
Why?
well, because of their political interests, and because of what's happening in Ukraine and Russia, and because of the Russian, encroachment in Africa. Now Russia is all over the place, and Russia.
Let's see.
Exactly, at a certain point, Russia wants to have a base in the Red Sea, and all of that. So this is quite serious for the U.S., and for this reason, they are trying to make sure that this doesn't happen. Now, for us as ordinary Sudanese, looking for a peaceful and smooth transition to democracy, we would expect something in this front also. Of course, the U.S. has its own interests, but we also have our own interests that we would like to advance. And one of the positive things that in the very statement of the new U.S. ambassador to Sudan was that he is going to work or to do his best so that the Sudanese people aspiration would be realized. That is a good thing. But is that going to happen?
So generally, just in a tricky question, the interest of America, they are also following their interest and their national security. Which type of regimes will be favorable? They like which type of regime? That's why I said tricky question, but
well, of course, they
like
to me, whatever regime that serves their interest would be their ally.
Which one? Definitely the parliamentary.
Well, there are examples.
Or the democratic, because it is changing.
There are examples. And we all know the tensions with the U.S. administration during Sadiq al-Mahdi's premiership. You remember that?
Yes, I remember.
Because Sadiq sees himself as having he was brought by a popular vote, and that he is not going to succumb to any, And this is a kind of speech that the U.S. doesn't like. So regardless of the type of government in place, I think they would be happy with any government that would serve their interests. That is, I think, too obvious.
Okay, maybe our last question will be about the United Nations involvement. First, United Nations involved in Sudan under Chapter 7 for the first time, and it's not customary, it's not normal that the United Nations adopts Chapter 7 in different cases, but in very few cases in the history of 77 years of the United Nations. But it did that under Chapter 7, the UNAMID in Darfur, with multinational troops in Darfur for about 27 or 26,000. They were in Darfur, and then the United Nations Security Council decided to withdraw these troops, UNAMID troops under Chapter 7, and were replaced by, under Chapter 6, on request of Hamdouk, by the UNITAMs. UNITAMs of Volker to help in
The transition.
in the transition. And many people now, they think that some people, they don't accept, they started to raise points and raise hands against the presence of Volker
Peretz.
under Chapter 6. Although it is something international and in fulfillment to a request from Sudan. Whether Hamdouk is here or there, but still it was a request from Hamdouk. Can you tell us about
Well,
it?
I think it's naive to think of Volker Peretz as impartial. This is naivety, because the whole mission was here to support the transition to democracy. So I wouldn't be surprised if those who are backing the military coup would look at him as impartial. This is self-evident, you know. So there is no point in asking Volker to be impartial. This doesn't make any sense. Actually, the whole mission is here to help smooth the transition. So if there are people who are against the transition, of course they would look at Paris as impartial.
You mean there's against democracy?
Of course, you have pro-democracy people,
yes.
and you have those who are crippling the transition.
Yes.
And those who are crippling the transition are the ones who are saying Volker is not partial. To me, this is too obvious, you know.
This is not good. Do you think it's something naive?
It is naive.
When you talk about this, you are a member of the United Nations and you are eligible and entitled to get assistance from the United Nations as a member. Now he's helping you.
No, I think, you know, my point is that those who are saying that Volker Paris is not
welcome.
They're naive, to say the least. Because the very basis of forming the UNITAMs is to do precisely what they are against, is to help in transition to democracy. And this is what they are doing. What they are doing.
So you don't think they are taking sides? They
are doing their job.
Professionally, in a very professional
This is
manner.
what they are here to do. They are here to side with those who are looking for a smooth transition to democracy. Full stop.
Yeah. So you think that those who are opposing the UNITAMs are not genuine about their desire to go for
They're not genuine.
full democracy?
No, yes, they're not genuine.
So what do you propose? What do you expect that? Will
Well, now, you know, Burhan in his speech yesterday, he clearly said that Sudan supports UNITAMs and supports the trilateral mechanism.
It's very good.
That's it. So you have the head of state,
Head of the state.
pledging support.
So people talking, shooting around the bush.
Yeah. They are not serious.
I did not hear, listen to the speech, but if he mentioned that,
No, he did. This is actually at the very beginning of his speech.
welcome UNITAM, so
Yes.
nobody can talk.
Yeah. He said it clearly.
Because some top officials, not only the politicians.
Well, Burhan himself, at a certain point, said,
He said we'll expel him.
of course, he said that. This is on record. But yesterday, he expressed his support.
And welcome of
Oh,
the,
yes, yeah, of course.
So this is definitely, this is something.
This is just sort of the political rhetoric, you know, trying to be politically correct. And you see, and in Sudan we have this Hilal Mirrikh kind of mentality that is there. But objectively, the UNITAMS is here to stay and it's here to do what it was brought to do.
Okay, that's our last question. We have your own feeling of the situation. In 1 or 2 minutes, we are now wrapping up. What do you feel? What is your feeling? You said that General Burhan should take the decision of appointing. Just in 2 minutes, can you tell us about your feeling or your expectation?
Well, I think the situation doesn't really allow to relax. You know, something has to happen. We have two possibilities. Either the military re-engage in the dialogue, or the chairman of the Sovereign Council takes the decision to form a cabinet of technocratic members, and that's it. We don't have. I really don't see that we have other options.
Other options.
We don't.
Other option or time?
We don't.
Have
We don't
Okay.
have options. We don't have time.
Okay, thank you, Professor Mansour Abdullah Mansour, for this hour. We covered almost a lot of issues and events, and we were very frank and very clear about the issues which I asked you about. I'm sure that the viewers will have also their own comments, but you have been very good and very precise and to the point to the questions. Thank you, dear viewers, for being with us in the last hour or so with our guest, Professor Mansour Abdullah Mansour. We hope to see you next week in a different issue and different topic of episode Horizon. That is good in the Horizon. Bye and see you.